Marble Hill, located off Great Road and Harvard Road in Stow, is a beautiful walking trail, place for exercise, and a wildlife lookout where people have found peace within the woods. As a Stow resident myself, my parents and grandparents brought me here often while growing up. I've spent countless hours walking, running, and exploring Marble Hill, as well as other public conservation lands nearby. Yet, with land development a constant presence in Massachusetts, I often wondered how the land like Marble Hill has remained untouched. How did Marble Hill come to be preserved? Who led the initiative? To answer that, we need to look back at the 1960s, when the conservation movement in Stow was just beginning. In 1966, Stow was a much more rural community than it is today.
When I moved to Stow, it was still very much a rural community. This was in 1966. And there were less than 2,000 people in the town. I remember Franny Warren and his town clerk kept a tabulation of the number of people. So it was still very much a rural community. And that began when Route 495 went through that change, and digital equipment was spending so rapidly in Maynard. That changed pretty dramatically. The town began to be developed a lot, and we began to lose some of the really beautiful, pristine places in town.
This was true. Just 9 years earlier, in 1957, construction had begun on Route 495, which quickly funneled people and technology into the more rural parts of central Massachusetts. As more people moved in, development followed, and suburban neighborhoods started popping up all around. From 1960 to 1970, Stow's population surged by 55%, from 2,573 to nearly 4,000 residents, an increase that mirrored the broader trend in the state. Across central Massachusetts, vast tracts of natural land were being replaced with residential development and roads, with little thought given to conservation. By the mid-1900s, much of former farm and grazing lands were in the process of reforesting themselves, and many Stow residents enjoyed hiking, cross-country skiing, and riding horses on informal trails that had sprung up all around. Two of those residents, Leonard Johnson, formerly of Red Acre Road, and the late Thomas Shepard of Harvard Road, enjoyed the rural character of Stow.
We loved all the different paths there were near where we lived, and we used to, there was a path that went off of Harvard Road, and you could go from there up a path that led you to the top of Marble Hill, and then you could go down sort of the other side, and eventually you would come out on Taylor Road. But Tom had a vision that I think that the trust has done a little bit to try to make almost a circle of trails in Stow. Not more than just Marble Hill, but that was an important beginning to it.
They both saw how quickly development was progressing, and they worried about the consequences for open land. They understood that without intervention, Stow's historic rural character and its natural charm could be lost forever. As housing developments spread rapidly throughout neighboring towns, they were determined to protect a parcel of land that would preserve Stow's quality.
Tom Shepard, who was a good friend of mine, and I got a group together, and we talked about preserving land, and we just didn't quite gel. So Tom and I decided that if we're going to start this whole enterprise going, we needed to act ourselves. So we agreed that if some project came up and the two of us could buy it, we'd buy it.
The hunt for the perfect piece of land began, and after searching around the town, Johnson and Shepard found what they were looking for: a large, undeveloped parcel of over 100 acres owned by Bill Peck, located between Great Road, Harvard Road, and Taylor Road. This land had once been used for grazing farm animals, as evidenced by the stone walls that still lie on the property, but it had since become a forest of white pines and hemlocks. With its natural beauty and close proximity to the town's center, the land was ideal for conservation.
I think it was probably Herb Potter who would have known that we were interested in that, and he knew Bill Peck. The Pecks lived down at the base of Harvard Road, just off of Great Road, and they had lived in town for a very long time. And Bill owned this property of what is now 250 acres roughly.
Negotiations with landowner Bill Peck began, and soon Johnson and Shepard were able to purchase the land.
And so it was over 5 years, so my share was $50,000, so I paid $10,000 a year. And he wanted to space it out over 5 years for tax reasons, so he paying the capital gains tax, it would be more adverse for him to do it all in 1 year, and it was much better for us, obviously.
However, their goal was not to keep the land in private hands, but to eventually make it accessible to everyone in Stow. They knew they would need road access for trailheads, and so, as part of their process, they sold off unneeded plots on Taylor Road to fund the purchase of lots on Harvard Road. These new lots would provide ample trailhead parking and road access to Marble Hill. Once the land had been prepared for public access, they made an offer to the town of Stow. Remarkably, instead of seeking profit, Johnson and Shepard proposed selling the land to the town for exactly what they had paid, $160,000 in total, which covered the original purchase from Peck, as well as the additional lots. The town voted unanimously in May of 1975 to authorize the Conservation Commission, with the approval of Stow selectmen, to purchase the 185-acre property. The town raised the necessary funds by issuing municipal bonds to be paid off over 20 years and sought reimbursement from the state and federal government for at least half of the cost. This purchase also included 72 acres of land owned by the heirs of Charles E.D. Fletcher, bought for $50,400, which further expanded the town's protected open space.
Some initial purchases by some individuals brought people to recognize how important it was to preserve open space, to preserve the character of the town. And that's what this is really all about, preserving the character of the town.
The town's overall goal was to increase Stow's percentage of open space from just 5%, about 600 acres, to 15 to 20%, ensuring that future development would not erase the town's natural beauty and rural character. After the purchase, Marble Hill was transformed into a public space that reflected the town's commitment to conservation and recreation. Over the years, Stow has added various features such as a parkour active trail named the Head Life Course in memory of a former Stow resident. As they hike, visitors can engage in physical exercises at the different stations. Today, the hill is a beloved destination for families and friends who enjoy outdoor walks together. Visitors can hike to the peak, which reaches a maximum of 347 feet, or navigate to the broken down cars near the back of the property. The length of the hiking trail that runs through the property is about 3.4 miles round trip and winds through mature oak, maple, hemlock, and white pine trees. There are 4 different trails, including the green, white, red, and yellow, which are clearly marked. With its well-maintained paths and manageable terrain, Marble Hill offers an escape from the busy hum of daily life. As I walk these trails today, I think about the foresight and legwork that went into securing this land. The great effort that Leonard Johnson and Thomas Shepard made to conserve Marble Hill has ensured that future generations will continue to enjoy this special place.